right. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Don't have my headphones in yet. Don't have the lights on yet. It's very dark in here. It's very dark and spooky. They'll go on in a moment. Just getting my act together. All right. Got my monitors in my ear. I can hear myself. I mean, I could hear myself before. Let's be clear. I mean, I'm right here. But now I can hear myself as if I was you. So that worked out. All right. Let's get some lights on, and then we'll fix the website banner. Lights would be here. Lights. Let's log on to our controls to just turn all the outlets on at one time. And that's promising. And the back, there we go. Lights are on. We can log out of that. We were going to change the website page, right? Let's do that. And we can log off of that. We edited the page there. Let's go to our settings and change the bar across the top that currently says the study group is Wednesday. It is not Wednesday. The study group is right now. Click here to join us. And instead of the registration page, it should go to /live. Reset the cookie in case you hit it. It will now pop up for you, and we'll save the changes, and that's done. Oh, you know what I haven't done is my audio for the podcast, which I normally do before I start going live, but now you get to enjoy all of this in real time. Let's find the text. What's today? Today is October the 11th. October the 11th. Is that what I have here? Is this the right presentation? Am I in the right place? One has to wonder. Okay, this is Network Plus. See, everything got messed up because of last week. I feel like we just did Network Plus. October the 11th. And I have to put this in here because when I'm reading, I'm just an automaton. Whatever it has on the screen, that's what I say. So, in fact, I just misspelled my name, and I would have said my name wrong. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group. This study group was recorded on October the 11th, 2017. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group After Show. This after show was recorded on October the 11th, 2017. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. That works. We're recording. Cylons are there, so you know we're recording. Let's put a note in the chat. Hello, chat room. Network Plus Study Group. That looks good. We'll put it in the study group chat. We'll put it in regular chat. You know what I didn't get? Didn't get something from my throat. What did I do with my my throat things? They're just not here. I'm going to have to do that before we go much farther. Because that is not good. All right, we can get rid of the script. Let's make sure the presentation's going to work. What's the name of that again? Key, search, key, note. There we go. Looking for my MacBook. Not find it. There it is. Is it working? There we go. All right, let's do a camera check, shall we? I need to get Socrative up and running too. Teacher login. And this is the Network Plus quiz. Let's launch a quiz. Network Plus. They got these nice folders now. Make it very easy to find things. And this is teacher paste. No names required. And start. And we should start to see things pop up in Socrative. Okay. I look a little short. We're going to adjust we're going to adjust this. I'm going to change that screen in a moment. All right. I think my chair goes down a bit. Let's see if it does. Oh, yeah. That's a big difference. And camera 3 is what's on my front screen. Actually, camera 3 should have me in it like that. Hi. And camera 4 is the presentation. There we go. All right. Well, that's all good right there. That's all good right there. We got 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, everyone. 4.5 minutes. Time for me to get a lozenge or something before we spray my throat before we get going. Let me disconnect. I will be right back. Okay, now we got stuff. It was hidden behind my monitor. It's hidden behind the iMac. There we go. What's going on outside? Haven't checked that today. Turn that down. Don't have Skype loaded either. I'm so behind today. There's Skype with its annoying thing. Well, look, we got birds today too. See, that's what's going on outside. It's nice. Some cardinals. Okay. This is Singer's Soothing Throat Spray Honey Lemon, everybody. Oh, that is some good stuff there. Mm-hmm. The Socrative should not be different today. ProfessorMesser.com/QA gets you there. What is different about it? I wasn't expecting anything to be different. Other than, are there words on it? Is it correct? That's the important part. In fact, you should see the Socrative that's there should be this. What is the approximate age of the world's oldest fossils? Not a reference to me. Not really. I don't think so. I show a 110 block with a black and orange wire. I don't know. Probably voice. It was just an image I found of a block. 110 blocks usually these days have voice on them. There's some older, slower networks. Older Ethernet might go through a block like that. We got finches. We got all kinds of birds coming today. Well, it's because I put some food out on the bird feeder. Birdfeeder.live. 24/7. You can see what the heck's going on in my backyard. And should be reading what's up there. It shows it is the 11th, 82 degrees Fahrenheit. There. It's that reading comprehension. All right, we got a minute. Let's shut down the birdfeeder.live. There she goes. Bye now. Let's put on this. Let's get this ready. So many buttons. Okay, let's do a quick check. We're recording online, of course. We're online. Well, it doesn't, they're just colors. It's not the wires. It doesn't matter what wires you use. There's a wire on the floor. You'll grab it and use it as a jumper. So it doesn't, the color of the wire is not the most important thing, is where the wire is going to. Obviously, in networking, you're trying to compare wires. You're trying to make sure. But if all the wires were colored black, it would still work, right? I'm just saying. So we've got last check. Audio's good. Audio's a little loud. Audio's a little loud. Turn the mic down a little bit. I'm going to come down just a little bit. Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check. I like that a little better. That audio is a little bit lower than what I'm used to doing, but I think that's it's good where I'm here. Right. The copper is more powerful. It's red and black. That's true. But it has to be red and black together. You can't just have red and you can't just have black. It has to be red and black together. Recording here, recording online. That's three things. What else do we have to get ready to do? I think that's it. I think now Socrative is there. Website's ready. Oh, did the tweet even go out? There I am. I can see me in the tweeter. So the tweet went out. Welcome everybody from the Twitter and the Facebook and the places with the stuff. How's my collar? I haven't even looked at myself. Am I respectable? Well, I can see myself in the preview. You can kind of see it right there, but I also see it up there. It looks all right. Oh, you know what the problem? I got a problem with that's in the screen. There we go. Now it's out of the shot. I am truly live this morning. Okay, it's time to get started. I'm a minute late, in fact, and that will never do. So let's begin this thing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2017 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group, coming to you live from Messer Studios in our world headquarters in Tallahassee, Florida. My name is James Messer. I will be your host for this next hour of interactive live Q&A, all about topics related to the Network Plus exam. There is a lot going on with Network Plus these days. Before we jump into the details, let me remind you that you can always follow what's going on at professormesser.com/Twitter. You can always subscribe. You can always like. You can always comment. professormesser.com/YouTube. Smash that subscribe button. About over it, aren't you? There's also vouchers. Don't forget about discounts. The vouchers are available at professormesser.com/vouchers. Don't pay full price for your CompTIA A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or any of your CompTIA vouchers. You can get a discount right off the top right there. This is all about Network Plus today. Everything networking, everything that's on the Network Plus exam objectives. I guess there's a little security in there as well. We're going to go through a number of topics today. We're going to do interactive QA, and I'll tell you how all of that works in just a moment. We're able to do this thanks to your help and your support. I've got not only all of my videos, every minute of all of my training videos are available to watch for absolutely free on the internet on my website at professormesser.com, but I also have an offline version available that you can purchase. You can find 1080p video. They're all closed captions. There's MP3 files if you want to put it onto a mobile device. My course notes come with this. We'll talk about my course notes in a bit as well. All of this is available for you to see at professormesser.com/getNetPlus. I've also got some Network Plus questions you can go through. In fact, I've got A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus questions on my website. A block of 20, and I have I think there's a few hundred questions there at this point, maybe over 100 Network Plus questions. You can have a look, professormesser.com/popquiz. All of the questions are there, and they're free, just free to go through. There are archives of this study group. I write all my questions. So I know that the questions are something that might get you thinking about Network Plus. These aren't gimmies in these question blocks. So don't expect to just be asked what a port number is or what a protocol is. I'm giving you detailed questions there because they come from these study groups, and you'll see why in just a moment. There is also podcasts I make available. I was a little late getting the A+ podcast out this week, but I will make sure I get the Network Plus podcast out today or tomorrow. Usually it's a day after the study group. It's available at professormesser.com/podcast. So you can listen to this replay wherever you happen to be in an audio form. You can, of course, go to my website and watch a video replay of any of my study groups going back years. I don't know why you would want to see me years ago, but there you go. We're going to do questions today. A lot of QA, a lot of interactivity. I'm going to ask questions. You're going to respond. We'll see the answers live and online. The way we do this is through a third-party, very nice service called Socrative. Quick way to get there. And by the way, this only works if you're watching this live. If you're watching this on the replay, there's no live interaction. It's that live word. It messes up everything, doesn't it? And you can find that at professormesser.com/QA. I don't have that listed here on the screen, but it's on the other screens. And it is on my website. If you're watching this live and you want to follow in with the chat room, which I'm looking at right now, we've been talking about the color of wires in the pre-show. You go to professormesser.com/live. And on there is all the links to everything. It's links to the Q&A. It's links to the course notes. It's links to everything I talk about. Right there on that page, professormesser.com/live. So, Network Plus, the current version is the N10006. This is a version that was released February of 2015. So we're coming up on what will be an update we expect for the Network Plus. There should be a new version of the exam released probably in March. CompTIA has not made any official statements. There have been comments made on the internet, but there's just no way to verify any of those comments. So I think it's probably about close, though. If you look, the release was February 28th, so 3 years from then would be about that time frame. So we can expect a new exam. Now, what I expect, of course, is with all of the other exams that Network Plus, A Plus, Security Plus through the years, CompTIA releases a new set of questions, which is what this is. It's a new set of exam questions, exam objectives, but you can still take the old version for a very long time. So that's one of the things that probably 6 months or so is usually the norm. So even though they introduce a new version of the exam, the N10007, you can still take the N10006 for another 6 months after. So I fully expect around this time next year, you'll probably be right at the end of being able to take the N10006. So if you're right now planning to do this, you've got a year. If you're watching this live on October the 11th of 2017. So don't wait for a new version to come out. There's no reason, because whether you take the N10006 and pass that exam or take the N10007 and pass that exam, you get exactly the same certification. So there's no real benefit to waiting. In fact, you can only lose by waiting. Never wait to get certified. Now, if you've gone to professormesser.com/QA, there's a question there. This is our test. This has nothing to do with Network Plus, granted, but it's a way that we can see if the online Q&A is working for you. You should see a question there. You can go through and answer. In fact, the question that's there is, what is the approximate age of the world's oldest fossils? And the options available to you, it's a multiple choice question, is less than 500 million years, 750 million years, 1 billion years, 2 billion years, or more than 4 billion years. And you'll notice if you go to professormesser.com/QA, it takes you right to that page. So you're able to see the answers. You're able to answer them. In fact, 39% of you have said 750 million years. 29% of you have said 2 billion years. We're about a tie for third between 4 billion years and less than 500 billion years. And then only 5% right in the middle chose 1 billion years. Seems like that's right in the middle of all the questions here. That's the one I probably would have gone with to be able to have that. There is plenty of options here to choose from. These will be the types of questions we go through the day where you'll be able to select either from a group, or we might have some multiple choice and fill in the blanks. In fact, one of the first ones is going to be a fill in the blank. So if you're able to get to this page and see the question, everything is working for you, stay on this page. Don't close it out, because it will simply update the screen when I go to the next question. So what is the approximate age of the world's oldest fossils? And the approximate age, if we have a look, we have found microscopic fossils of bacteria in Quebec, and they are dated at 4.2 billion with a B years old. 4.2 billion years old for these fossils. So those have been around for quite some time, and they're Canadian. They're very polite fossils. Now, the reason I mention this is because today, if you're watching this live on October the 11th, today's National Fossil Day. I don't know what that means, but maybe it just means we ask questions about fossils. So that's what this Network Plus study group will be, all about fossils. No, it won't. All the questions after this will be Network Plus questions. But now, hopefully, you've got the idea. You've now gotten into the question. You can kind of see what the options are. Now we can do actual Network Plus questions. Now, one of the things that you may notice if you go to take any of these CompTIA exams these days is not all of the questions are multiple choice. A number of the questions that you will get at the beginning of the exam are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. This means that the questions themselves are not multiple choice or anything but multiple choice. They could be fill in the blank. They could be a matching question. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function, all of those types of things. So this is one that you might want to think about when you're stepping through all of these different options. I like to give you a performance-based question right up, first thing, to see how that is. And I like in the chat room that people are asking, how old is the study group? It's live. We're here live today. I don't have today's paper on October the 11th of 2017. But the way I was scrambling around, trust me, it's pretty darn live. and have these things there. Let's do a question. Here's the first question I have for you. It's a fill in the blank. So this is not the normal multiple choice. This is the kind you might be faced with when you jump into the exam and you get these performance-based questions. So what I have are 5 DNS record types, and I have 5 descriptions. And the question is to match these DNS record types to the descriptions. The 5 DNS record types I have are MX, CNAME, AAAA, PTR, and A. So those are the 5. And then the 5 descriptions I have are A is an IPv6 address of a printer name. B is map an IP address to a name. C is to email a server IP address. D is to IPv4 address of a server name. And E is the secondary name of a device, secondary name of a device. So we've got these 5 different options. They all match to one of these individually. So if you think they're matched up right now, in the blank, you can put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and 5E. And that would be your answer. There's no way to do matching on Socrative. So we're just going to do a fill in the blank. Of course, they are not that way. It's not 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and 5E. But you should be able to figure out, based on these DNS record types, what those record types are referencing, what they refer to. So maybe you have them there. And I'm looking at I wonder if I put the right things on my side too, because I'm looking at now my presentation. Did I even put the right answers in? Who knows? Do I have them here? Oh yeah, I have them here. I've got the right things there. I did them differently on my screen. I was looking at them and thought, I'm looking at the next slide because I have a way to, on my screen, I have a way to see right here. I can see the current slide and I can see the next slide. And I don't have the next slide in front of me. And I thought, wait, that looks exactly the same as this slide. That's because I did some matching on my screen so that you would be able to see it. So a number of you are struggling through this one. I get it. This is not something that's relatively obvious when you start looking at these. It's one where you really have to go through. It's not where I'm asking what it is. I'm asking what it does. And you're going to find this on the exam quite a bit, is that the exam is not going to ask you for definitions. It's going to ask you, how do you apply these particular topics to do something in the practical world? I think that's why they call these performance-based questions. You really have to understand how these technologies are used, which I think is great. I think that's how you should be asked questions on the exam. If it was a bunch of questions full of definitions, nobody would learn anything. So it's pretty good that we did that. Let's see how we did with this. So I've got some possible answers here. Let's start with the first one, MX. Anybody care to take a guess of what MX is referring to? If we look at an MX record on a DNS server, the MX record of these 5 options would be an email server's IP address. So it'd be really any IP address. So it's one of those you might have to think about. Now remember, don't put the answer into the chat room since we are all trying to figure out these pieces. Maybe you as well can figure these out. Or yes, in the chat room, maybe write it down before you hit that answer, hit the submit button, or you might forget what you put in. But this MX record is used to determine or match a server name to an IP address or a device name to an IP address. It's a name to IP mapping, and especially one that is associated with mail servers. Really, it's looking just for the name of a mail server and trying to get the IP address of those. Whenever you start looking at trying to figure those out, that's where you really start working on trying to go through the process. So anytime you see MX, that stands for mail exchange, automatically you can think this is mail when it's associated with it. Let's try CNAME. CNAME would be a canonical name. That is one that is the secondary name of a device. So in fact, if you have a web server, you might call that web server www. In fact, we usually write that in, www.professormesser.com. The www is specifically referencing the server name, in my case, the device name of my web server. But what if on my web server I was also running FTP? I might want to create a CNAME record that says FTP is the same as www, in case you want to. And of course, I can fill that out with as many different aliases as I would like, so that I could name my web server anything. I can name it Odyssey. And then I type in odyssey.professormesser.com. It goes to the same server. So very, very useful to have those things there. All right, third one is quad A, AAAA. And what is that referencing? Anytime you see that many A's, it's talking about IPv6. An A record is referring to the IP address associated with an IPv4 IP address associated with the name. And whenever you see quad A's in a DNS record, it's referring to an IPv6 address. And as you can see, the only option there was A, the IPv6 of a printer name. So 1 was C, MX was C, the email server and IP address. 2, CNAME was E, the secondary name of a device. 3 was quad A, that's going to A, oddly enough, the IPv6 address of a printer name. Number 4 is the PTR address, and that is mapped to B, map an IP address to a name. Sort of the reverse of what normally you'd run into. Normally you give a name, like you type in google.com and it goes to Google. But what if you have the IP address and you want to know what name's associated with that? You need a pointer record, a PTR, and that would get there as well. And so the number 4 PTR is mapped to B, map an IP address to a name. Last one is A, the A record. And as I mentioned, we just talked about the A records being IPv4, and the only option left is D, the IPv4 address of a server name. These are more than the right answers or the best answers. These are the only possible answers that you could have gotten with this particular one. These types of records are very specific on how they are used. DNS is nothing to be trifled with. It is a very complex set of protocols, especially difficult to manage at times. And it's so overwhelming in its importance, because if you mess up your DNS server, everything stops working. And I don't mean it stops working in that it doesn't operate, because behind the scenes, your servers are up and running just fine. It's just that nobody can get to them. And as they say, it's not taking the reservation. You have to hold the reservation. It's not just having the server up and running. People have to be able to get to the server. So make sure whenever you're someone managing DNS, you take special care on managing those things whenever you start working through all of those pieces. So hopefully you got these. So to summarize again, if you got 1C, 2E, 3A, 4B, and 5D, you got this one absolutely right. Well done with that. Yes, and thank you in the chat room for putting the isitdns.com link in there, because I think we know the answer to that one. Let's do another question. Let's jump into maybe a multiple choice. Get out of the performance-based. So our first question that's multiple choice would be, which of these would most likely be a result of using this patch cable? So here's an example of where the question itself is asking you for really the best possible answer. You should always be thinking this way anyhow, but this particular question has a number of options available. Which of these would most likely be a result of using this patch cable? And I have a picture there in case you didn't see that patch cable. That's the patch cable that I have. That's a real patch cable. That's me holding a real patch cable on the screen. It's kind of a mess, isn't it? Not a great patch cable. If you're listening to this on the podcast, it is a RJ45 connector. It appears to be wired in what you would expect. I guess you would really have to look at the colors to see. But the sheath that's around the wires is outside of the RJ45 connector. So there's this gap between the sheath and the inside of the connector. So you sometimes will run into that. The possible answers are A, there's no signal between devices. B, it operates at 100 megabits per second, but not 1 gigabit per second. C is higher than normal crosstalk. D is will not operate without a crossover adapter. Or E, it's appropriate for data, but not for voice over IP. One of those. Hopefully you know the answer to that one. Although this one says what would most likely be a result of using this patch cable. I think you can probably, if you work through all of these, there's really only one that really fits. I know it says what is the most likely. But in this case, most likely is pretty obvious. In fact, most of the questions you get on the exam that say most likely, it will really jump out at you. You'll be able to see very clearly what they're talking about. So if it doesn't jump out at you, then you're missing something in the question, or perhaps you don't understand the topic well enough. It's another good way to test yourself in being able to get through all of those pieces. Oh, and this chat room's talking about those as well. It's talking about what's best and what's not best. So it's always something to think about as you're going through there. Might want to let the person in the chat room know who says there's no audio. Let them know there's absolutely audio. Or it would be a really boring study group. Absolutely. Somebody might want to be able to type in there for me. That audio is great. Maybe they can refresh, check their audio, go through the troubleshooting steps. In all of there is indeed audio. There we go. So let's see how we did with this one. Which of these would most likely be a result of using this patch cable? 60% of you said higher than normal crosstalk. And then it drops off pretty well after that. 14% of you said it's appropriate for data, but not for voice over IP. 13% said there's no signal between devices. 9% said that it operates at 100 megabits per second, but not a gig per second. And 5% said it will not operate without a crossover adapter. So let's have a look. What would be our problem with this poor connector, this poor, sad connector in having that there? So let's have a look at what we might run into. Indeed, this is all about crosstalk. So whenever you talk about crosstalk, this is where you have a situation where the signal on one wire is showing up on another wire. The signal itself is being inductively transferred onto another wire. And we call that extra signal crosstalk. If you've ever been on a traditional a plain old telephone system, a POTS line, you've picked up an analog telephone and you're talking and you can hear someone else talking at the same time. And it's somebody who's on another phone line. There's probably crosstalk between those two. It's not that they're on your line, because they're so far away. It's just a distant voice, but it's probably more often than not crosstalk. That's the problem. And crosstalk is almost always a wiring issue because we have created a standard for Ethernet that as long as you're performing all of the proper wiring, you're doing the best practices for crimp, you're using the correct type of cabling, you're not going to have any problems with crosstalk. One thing you can absolutely do is maintain the twists. The twists on that cable, if you ever look at the inside of an Ethernet cable, you notice all of the pairs are twisted together. And they're twisted that way to minimize crosstalk. There will always be part of the one wire or another that's moving away from the noise. And what happens on the other end is we're able to examine the signal across both of those wires, and we're able to blank out any of the noise that went through because one of them will be loud, one of them will be soft, and you can get rid of both. Kind of nice to have that there. So don't take your cables and pull them all out and get rid of all the twists and then put the connector on the end. Then you're going to definitely have crosstalk at that point. If you ever look at something like category 6A, it's a really thick cable. It's got extra spacers in the middle of it. It keeps the wires very separated from each other because we're putting higher frequency signals generally on category 6A. We're sending something like gigabit Ethernet, 10 gig Ethernet over those cables. So we want to be sure to separate them out as much as possible. And of course, hopefully you've got hardware. You've got testing systems that can plug in all of your wires. You put test on one end of the wire, a tester on the other end. You send signal through, and it's able to tell you just how much crosstalk is on this wire, how much signal is getting through from one side to the other. Do we have any shorts? Do we have any cable pinouts that are out of order? It will tell you all of that. So having hardware can certainly help with that problem. So if we look at how we did with this one, that's 61% of you that said C, higher than normal crosstalk would be absolutely correct. Now we saw that there's a kind of a tie for second, no signal between devices. If this was wired incorrectly, and of course we don't have the other end of this to look at, we just have this end in this picture to look at, then we know that it appears to be wired properly. We at least have all the wires that are crimped down properly. If there were no wires crimped down properly or there was some other type of major issue, perhaps no signal will be getting through. But here, this might work. This connector might work to a point. It would, until the point you're trying to get a lot of signal through. And then the crosstalk would cause everything to slow down a bit. Appropriate for data, but not voice over IP. Voice over IP is data, right? So in this particular case, voice over IP is the same thing as data. So it wouldn't be a situation where it would be appropriate for one kind of data, but not another kind of data. That would be interesting. I have a cable that inherently did quality of service. Maybe I should work on that. That'd be very useful, actually. 9% of you said operates at 100 megabit per second, but not a gigabit per second. That could happen if you did have this wired improperly, but again, we don't have the other end of this. And if you look at the colors look right. So for those of you that know about the colors, you know about your 568A and 568B cabling types. that looks cabled just fine. So wouldn't have a problem there with the speeds. If we didn't cable it just fine, maybe we cabled the 4 wires that we would need for 100 megabit, but not the other 4 properly that you need for gig, it might pop down to 100 megabit per second, but that's not the case here. And the last one will not operate without a crossover adapter. Again, we don't have the other side of this, but it does look like everything on here is cabled properly. It's not set up as a crossover. We didn't even talk about what was going to be plugged into the other side of this. The crossover doesn't apply. The best possible answer here, and the only one that really should jump out at you, is C, higher than normal crosstalk. If you answer C, got that one absolutely right. Let's do another question. I've got one for you. This one is about 802.11ac. Which of the following would be most associated with 802.11ac? Now, if you know your wireless standards, this one's going to be a gimme. I like to throw a gimme in there every once in a while, but maybe you know what they are. The possible answers are, which of the following would be most associated with 802.11ac? Option A is that it operates at 5 gigahertz and or 2.4 gigahertz. B is that it can operate over 8 MIMO streams. C is that each stream communicates at 54 megabits per second. D is that it is an original 802.11 standard. And E is that it requires multiple IP addresses for dual frequency use. One of those would be the best possible answer here. In fact, it's really the only answer. You should be able to get this. Now, if you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That stands for question answer. Yes, kind of sneaky the way I did that. And that will take you directly to the page. Now, again, if you're watching this on the replay, going to professormesser.com/QA doesn't get you anywhere. You won't see a question there. Just follow along with us on the replay, and I think you'll do just fine. This is one, by the way, that you do have to know a lot about your wireless standards. And of course, we keep adding more wireless standards. So on the latest Network Plus, we've got this 802.11ac, along with all of the other wiring standards that you have to know, wireless standards you have to know. So make sure you really understand wireless. It will almost certainly be asked of you to some regard on the exam. And it makes sense. We're using wireless in so many places. It just makes sense that we would use it enough that would cause us to have a lot of questions on the exam. So let's see how we did with understanding 802.11ac. 52% of you said it operates at 5 gigahertz and or 2.4 gigahertz. That's the majority. 53% have said A. 33% said B can operate over 8 MIMO streams. 7% of you said each stream communicates at 54 megabits per second. 4% said it's an original 802.11 standard, and 2% said it requires multiple IP addresses for dual frequency use. So in this case, all of our answers, A, B, C, D, and E, came in exactly that order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's talk about 802.11ac. Nice standard. This was one that's been out not very long in wireless networking terms, January 2014. This is the improvement to 802.11n, or the next version of wireless that you'll run into after 802.11n. It operates only in the 5 gigahertz band. Does not operate in the 2.4 gigahertz band. But wait, Professor, Mr. Professor, I have an 802.11ac wireless router, and it has both 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz on it. Well, the 802.11ac part is running at 5 gigahertz, but if you're doing anything at 2.4 gigahertz, you're actually using 802.11n. How about that for a little bit of trivia? We're able to bond together additional channels on this. We get quite a nice channel bonding on this. That means that we can use a lot of bandwidth at one time. If the bandwidth is available and free to us and it's open, there's not a lot of interference from other things or other access points, we can have a lot of channels bound together. It's also got a denser signaling modulation, and what's nice about this is 8 MIMO streams. So you can really have 8, if your router, if your wireless access point supports this, you can have up to 8 streams going simultaneously. 802.11n had 4 streams simultaneously. But when you start putting together, and this requires additional radios, because you're effectively using multiple radios simultaneously to increase the throughput of these devices. but nearly 7 gigabits per second in speed. That is a really fast wireless. Now, that, of course, is a theoretical maximum. You have to have all of the right equipment. You have to have all of the right configurations. You have to have your air. The frequencies have to be available. The air has to work properly for you to be able to do that. But boy, it really is a nice improvement over 802.11n just from a bandwidth perspective. I think it works a little bit better too. Yeah, I have an image somewhere. I should have put it in here that I did for Network Plus. In fact, maybe I can find it real quick since we're talking about this. That really does describe nicely the differences between the 2.4 gigahertz ranges and the much more open 5 gigahertz ranges. So I'm going to pull this up real quick. Oh, where did I put it? I'm working on the new Security Plus. There's a lot about wireless in the new Security Plus. So I'm trying to, I may have to go through and find the details. Oh, I could probably do a search, right? I know this is not compelling, and we may have to get it in the after show. But it's something that's pretty important if you're dealing with wireless. It's something I didn't put together for this particular one, but it's something that we might want to think about. Do I have it? If I don't have it here, we'll do it in the after show. So, oh, I do have it. So here is the band selection and bandwidth available on these different frequencies. So in North America only, 2.4 gigahertz is up here at the top. So there's, think of the 3 channels, 1, 6, and 11. They are 20 megahertz channels that span from 2,412 megahertz through 2,482 megahertz. That is all of the bandwidth available on 2.4 gigahertz. How much bandwidth is available on 5 gigahertz? Well, it's just look at one line of this. If we look at it in 20 megahertz chunks, so we're really same to same, it goes all the way down this line. So we go from what effectively is 5,150 megahertz all the way through 5,925 megahertz. Look at the difference, though, in how we use these. Now, these colors do different things. Some channels are available. Some are previously indoor. Some were added in April 2014. Some frequencies are not available for 802.11. So the red, you can say, okay, we're not using red. Take all the reds out. But anything that is yellow, blue, green on this, there's a lot more space available. Now, of course, these larger frequencies, since we have more frequencies available to us, we will have larger frequency bandwidths that we will use. So some of these standards, like 802.11c, can use 80 megahertz, 160 megahertz ranges. We can just use this enormous chunk at one time. But that should give you an idea anyway at the real differences between the 2.4 gigahertz band and the 5 gigahertz band, a significant difference between those two. So it's something that is pretty darn impressive. Whenever you start getting into, should I choose 2.4 or 5 gigahertz? I'm in a busy area. I'm living in an apartment building. Everybody's 2.4 gigahertz. Get 5 gigahertz. It will help you so much. So let's look at the answers here. The answers operates at 5 gigahertz and or 2.4 gigahertz. Although 56% of you did choose that as correct, it actually is not. As I mentioned, the 802.11ac standard does not have a 2.4 gigahertz part to it. It's only 5 gigahertz. The one that is the correct answer is the one that came in second. Can operate over 8 MIMO streams. 31% of you chose that one. You got that one absolutely right. Each stream communicates at 54 megabits per second. That would be not the correct throughput for this. It's much faster on these different streams. We've got an original 802.11 standard. No, this standard only came out a few years ago. Requires multiple IP addresses for dual frequency use. No. The lower level transport, the network level communication that's occurring, in this case, the physical and data link level that's occurring, requires multiple. Does not require multiple IP addresses. In fact, IP addresses aren't even in here in dealing with this. So if you answered B, can operate over these 8 streams. Did pretty well with that one. All of these wireless standards, by the way, you have to know. You have to know them cold because you'll get questions like this and being able to work through it. If you ever wondered what they all were, I've got everything in my notes that can tell you. My course notes, a lot of you already know about my course notes, but what I did, I went through every single one of my videos. I took every bit of text from all of my videos. I took all of the graphics from all of my videos, and I put them into a document, both a PDF document and a physical book form. Just depends on what you like better. If you like digital, you can get digital. If you buy the physical, I also give you the digital. It's kind of a double whammy there. If you get the digital, it's $15. So you can, of course, go through all of the presentations, the videos, everything I've got. You can write your own notes, but you may find that looking at my notes are already done. You don't have to go through all the videos. In fact, I've got them. I think I've got them on the screen right here. Show them to you. Here's my notes. I've got them. Here they are. So I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what's there and available. So we were going through and wondering, what do we do with all of these? There's all the cabling, all the different pieces with this. This is a 65-page document. This is enormous. Some people have said in the past, there's not enough in here. So I said, what if I put every bit of text from every single page and put it in here? And that's what I came up with. These are the course notes. This is the physical book version that you would get if you were to look through them. By the way, they're also numbered to match my videos. So let's see if I can find the right screen here for you to go through. So it's hard to see in this view, but you have, here's the one for network cabling tools, for instance, is video number 1.5. Common network topologies, 1.6. So if you're studying my videos, this does go right to the exact video. You're able to find it very quickly. It's got a nice table of contents for every single video that's in there. Can't see it. It's all blown up there because of the lights, but it's all in here and being able to work through it. This is extensive. These were recently updated a couple of months ago. So they used to be 15 pages. Now they're 65 pages long. Everything is in here from my videos. I left nothing out because people were saying, I don't have enough in here. It doesn't match everything. I'm having to write down everything. If you purchased the other version, the 15-page version, you can log on to your member login right now and download the 65-page version absolutely free. It's a free upgrade. So that's my thank you for supporting this. It keeps the lights on. It keeps us able to do these live streams. So it's one of the nice things about being able to bring this to you and do this is that I get your support. So thank you so much for that. $15, it's a steal. So have a look at that. That might help you get through the exam. I like having the digital version. I'm able to go back before I sit for the exam. I can go through different pieces. Something you can consider. Find out more about this, a whole description of what they are, available at professormesser.com/NPCN. If you have the old version, as I mentioned, you can download. You can go log into your member login right now and download the 65-page version. Absolutely free. And eventually there will be an N10007 version when they come out. That will be a new one for sale whenever it's available. But of course, I do plan on doing that when the exam objectives are finally available. Thank you for your support with this, by the way. As I mentioned, I would not be able to do this. I do this full time now, and I would not be able to do it without your support. So thanks. Let's get another question going. Got one right here. Who would have thunk it? Which of these would be the best tool to use on a 110 block? Weren't we just talking about a 110 block in the chat? I think we were just before we got going here. We were talking about the 110 block. Which of these would be the best tool for a 110 block? Your possible answers are a wire stripper, a TDR, a crimper, a punch down, or snips. Which of these would be the best tool to use on a 110 block? It would be the tool that uses blue and white, of course, says Cody. You're absolutely right. The 65-page version, if you're wanting to get the latest version, you bought the previous version of the course notes, you want to get the big 65-page version, no, just go to your downloads section where it says My Downloads. I think that's what it says. It says My Downloads, and just click the latest one that's there. I update that one, so you can always go back, and I think I put a version number there too, so you can see the version number that's there. So it's right there and available, so you can find it very, very, very easy. So that's one, and download it. Yeah, use that. So we're talking about 110 blocks. If you've never worked with a 110 block, you're lucky. It's one of these types of things, though, working with a punch down block, a 110 block, that you'll run into. And that indeed is what we want to find here for those answering. Oh, I didn't really see how we did. Kind of gave the answer. And of course, all of you already knew what the answer was. 91% of you said, oh, it's punch down block. So whenever we get to those, this is one where, whenever we look at punch down tools, we're going to be working with some type of block that's in the middle. A lot of people say, why are we even using these things, these punch down blocks, these patch blocks that are there with these 66 blocks and these 110 blocks? It's a very tedious thing to do. If you're somebody who likes that kind of work, though, although it's very tedious, it does require a lot of attention. And you have to make sure, especially if you're someone who's into making sure the cables are in perfect condition. This is a great thing to have there. What's nice about this, if you ever work with these, you put the wires in, and when you punch them down, although it's kind of loud when you're punching them down, it trims off all the wires and makes it very neat. You can do a very good job with using these punch down tools. But this is where we'd go in a punch down patch cable type scenario, be able to use these. I have punch down blocks in my data center, I call it, which is the closet, where I have a 19-inch rack. But there's one where when you start working with this technology and working with the punch down block, it's great because you can run all the wires from all over the place. So I have wires running from this desk, and it's running into my data center closet. It has running right up to the rack and running to the wall. And then I've got a punch down block there, and I punch down all of the wires that are coming from here into that room. And now those wires are there. They're never moving again. Well, if this moves, I guess they would be moving. But when they get into that room, they're punched down and waiting. So I can put my rack anywhere. I can move my servers around, because then I'll run a separate wire from those servers and devices to the punch down block. If I ever need to change that, I simply remove one side of it, move the room around, rearrange the room, and run my wires back to the punch down block. I didn't have to change any of the other pieces that are there. So it's kind of nice to have that available. Whenever you start working through these problems, that's where you really start getting into trying to figure out what are the right tools to use. And if you're someone who has been working with these punch down blocks, you need a good punch down tool to be able to put those wires in there. Some people say just use a screwdriver. Not the same thing. It's not going to get it in there. You're going to damage the punch down block. You need the right tools to be able to do this. I agree. I prefer not moving anything. And having those things there really helps to be able to do that and have those pieces available. So make sure you work through those as well. That might be something to think about whenever you're working through all of these. So let's do another question. Oh, by the way, we look at the possible answers there. You guys knew this one. This was indeed the gimme. So 92% of you that said punch down got that one absolutely right. Now, it wouldn't be a wire stripper. The 110 block doesn't require you to strip any wires. You put them in the punch down block, and the process of punching it into the block breaks through the plastic insulator that's on the outside of the wire and connects into the block itself. So there's no wire stripping at all, which is kind of nice. Makes it very fast. TDR, time domain reflectometer, which was our other option, that would be used if you were testing a wire, but it wouldn't be used for anything dealing with a 110 block. It wouldn't be a crimper because you don't need to crimp any connectors on. You're punching them into the block, effectively replacing the idea of having to crimp a connector on. That's why we use punch down blocks instead of crimping every single one of these ends, because you put in the block, punch, 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 and you're done. You go to the next one. There's no extra connectors. There's no extra anything. It kind of makes it nice. And then snips, you don't have to snip the wire. When you put it in, you punch it down, it automatically gets rid of the one that's there, the extra that's there. It cuts it off, makes it a nice, neat connector. So your really only option here, although I said the best tool, the only really option here is punch down. You guys got that one absolutely right. Let's shift gears and talk about IP addresses. More specifically, IPv6 addresses. And the question I have for you is about IPv6 compression. This is not a multiple choice question. This is a fill in the blank. So I kind of stuck a nice fill in the blank here right in the middle to be able to have this here. So you can see the option or the compressed version. The question is, what is the compressed version of this IPv6 address? And the address is, for those of you listening on the podcast, FE80 colon 0000 colon 0000 colon 0000 colon 000D colon 00FF colon FE00 colon 045D. That was just for you podcast people. The folks here that are looking at the screen are tired of me naming all of them. So that's one way where you start looking. What is, and then of course you have to figure out, what are you talking about compression? So that's another one you have to think about. The compression that's available, or the options available for this compression, are things you do have to know about. And I do compression questions all the time, because you do run into this with IPv6. And if you're working at all in networking these days, you're going to be networking a little bit with IPv6. Whenever I start looking at all of the answers to these, you do have to almost make this an automatic thing. You have to get so used to this that you're able to really go through this very quickly and put down exactly what you think the options might be for the compression associated with this. You're going to be reading IPv6 addresses all the time on routers, on devices, on workstations, on servers. You're going to need to know how to summarize these or compress them and uncompress them to be able to read them properly. So it's one of those that becomes pretty important to have that there. Let's go through. A lot of you are answering this. I'm not going to show all the answers coming through, although I guess I could. And they are many and varied. So I think we need some practice on our compression techniques and how we would do this. A lot of you are spot on with these, by the way. I'm getting a lot of colon. There's 4 colons in a row in that one. And some of you not doing any of those. So let's talk about what we would do with the compression. This may be a good answer to go through. We won't know exactly how many got it right or wrong, because it is a fill in the blank. But I want to go through the compression process so you would know it's the same thing every time. This is not something that's even hard to remember as well. So this makes it nice if you're sitting for the exam and you're trying to figure out what to do. So let's take our IPv6 address. I'm not going to say it out again on the screen, but there it is listed out. All 128 bits of this IPv6 address, all represented in hexadecimal, which really throws most people. Wait, there's letters. I don't know what, but you can just ignore that part. Just imagine this as a single address, and really it's no major difference. It's just another way to show what the address is. We could show IPv4 addresses in hexadecimal form as well. We just choose not to because it's a lot easier for us human beings to handle. The first step when you're dealing with IPv6 compression is you need to get rid of any leading zeros in each one of these groups. A leading zero would be anything that starts with a 0, a 00, or a 000. So if we look at that, we can get rid of a lot of zeros. You can see a lot of these groups did have some zeros in front of it. And I don't have my pinpoint is not turned on. So I'm gonna do this real quick so we can follow along. See, this is live. It's live, everybody. Now I've got the yellow part on my screen, so you can see as I'm moving around the screen what I'm doing. So the first step is to remove the leading zeros. So you can see a lot of these groups had 1, 2, or 3 zeros at the beginning that we were able to get rid of. This one at the end only had 1 0. This one had 2 zeros we were able to get rid of, but a lot of these had 3 zeros. Get rid of all the leading zeros. That's your first step. Second step would be any place that you see 2 or more groups of zeros together, replace that entire group with a double colon. Now, the important part about this could be a group of 2 zeros together. It could be 3 groups. It could be 4, it could be 5 groups. It could be 7 groups all together. Could be all collapsed with a double colon. The important thing to remember here is you can only use the double colon once. So you would commonly use this where there's the largest number of zeros. If there's a tie, it's commonly used at the beginning of the address rather in the back of the address. So if we were able to get rid of a bunch of zeros, we have 3 zeros all together. We can replace all 3 of those zeros with a double colon. So that's handy. And of course, we can't use the double colon again. We're done now. We'll only use that one time. So what we've got left is the FE80 : D : FF : FE00 : 45D. And that means that if we put this all together, there it is. There is the compressed version of that address. Look at the difference between the original address that's up here and the one that's here. You know, IPv6 is hard enough as it is, but if we're able to summarize a lot of the question like this, it becomes a lot easier. So that's one of the, we can only do 7 groups of 0. If you compressed, I guess technically you could compress all 8 groups of 0. Yes, you could. You could do a : /128. to specify everything. So that would be one way to really compress everything down. And you could use that. People use that in routing tables, for example. Be a good way to do that. So one of those is the nice way to think about anytime you're doing compression is to use that formula, that version of compression every time. Get rid of the leading zeros, abbreviate any groups of zeros, and you're done. And notice we aren't doing, in fact, chat room's very, very smart about this. Don't get rid of the trailing zeros. For example, our next to last group was FE00. You notice the FE00 didn't change. We don't get rid of the zeros at the end, the trailing zeros. We only get rid of the leading zeros. So that's one. You don't want to forget about that because the difference between FE00 and FE are very different. The difference between 00FE and FE, there's no difference at all. Those are exactly the same because it's zeros at the beginning. Almost like saying the difference between 0100 or 100 0. 100 0 would be 1,000. But 0100 and 100, they're the same thing. So don't forget about what the difference is between the leading and the trailing. You don't want to do that when you're working through them. So hopefully you were able to look through these pieces too and say, how do you use this? Where does it come from? Where I'm able to get all of these different pieces and take advantage of them. And this is where you do it. You really go through the process of compression. If you're planning to do anything with the next step in networking, you're planning to get in, maybe do some Cisco networking. You're thinking about doing maybe a third-party firewall type networking or anything past Network Plus, you're really going to need to know about IPv6. You're going to need to understand the compression part of it. So if you're ever in a position where you're wondering, is this really going to help me? It's absolutely going to help you. And it's surprising that you do run into these scenarios like you run into with service providers. All of your ISPs that you're connecting to, they're already running IPv6. You're the last person who's not running it yet. I'm running IPv6 here in the studio. I'm running it on my servers. So it's one where I just turned it on. And since everybody else around me was doing IPv6, I found it very easy for me to just enable it, and we were off to the races. So that's one of the ways that you can, of course, look at what am I going to do with IPv6? The answer is you're going to do a lot. And we're finally at that point. If you are going through and trying to figure out how do you work with IPv6, how do you do IPv4, how do you do anything relating to this routing, how do you understand IP addressing at all, you need to go through some labs. And the folks at GTS Learning have put together their live labs for Network Plus. You can find out about these get the special pricing at professormesser.com/netlabs, where they have labs all ready to go. They also include with this their Network Plus book. They include practice questions, and it's all online and available. You don't have to set up any hardware. You don't have to load up any software. You don't have to do anything. Normally, it's $169. They have a special price for $109 to be able to work with it. And what's nice about it is that it all runs in your browser. I think I have it right here. There we go. So I'm running a lab right now and configuring IPv4, IPv6 addressing and routing. And the lab is actually 6 machines in this particular lab. This is what I'm connecting to is a Windows server. There's other machines here that are available. Everything that's green here is a separate virtual machine. That's an important consideration. I can power it off. I can reboot it. I'm going to turn that one back on. They're all virtual machines. So this is a real Windows device. It's not taking you through the static single path to be able to get there. You can do in this lab anything you'd like. Now, they'll, of course, in the lab instructions, will take you through everything that you need to do, and they will give you step-by-steps. They'll tell you what to type in. They'll give you screenshots to go through. Everything is here. And you can, of course, make that much larger than it's looking like on my screen. But it's one that you can easily go through to a domain controller. And here's the domain controller I'm connecting to. And because it's effectively a remote desktop type scenario, it's very fast. So choosing server manager launches. I can choose all servers. It brings up the all server connections on here. Oh, it hasn't even connected to this to begin with. There's the server connections. Here's the DNS client events, the time service. You can click through. You can see it runs really fast for being able to do this with the remote desktop. And multiple operating systems are in here. So here's a Windows 8 machine, for example. So you can try a lot of different things with networking on a lot of different platforms and be able to work through them. And don't forget about the special pricing that's available as well. ProfessorMesser.com/netlabs. You don't have to have any coupon codes. You don't have to have any special arrangements. Just follow that link and you automatically get the best price on that. I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning for having that available. It's a nice option if you didn't want to set up a lab yourself. You might want to have a look at the GTS Learning Net Labs, which comes with their book, which is the book I use to make my Network Plus course. And it comes with those sample questions. So kind of a nice deal. Have a look at that, professormesser.com/netlabs. Let's do another question. We got another couple I think we may be able to fit in as we work through these. The question is about, let me click the next button so you can see it on your side as well. You are installing a UPS and you need to monitor it across the network. Which of these protocols would be the best choice? Another one of those questions where you want the best choice. You're installing a UPS, you need to monitor it across the network. Which of these would be the best choice? Your possible answers are A, HTTPS, B, SMTP, C is IMAP, D is TRAP, E is SNMP. One of those will be the best choice. For installing a UPS, good for you. Good for you installing a UPS and monitoring it across the network. That's what you should be doing. If you think you know the answer, you can go to professormesser.com/QA. You may even have one of these already set up in your network. You may already be monitoring it. It may be a gimme question for you. So one of those, being able to work through this. As I mentioned, when you're doing for questions in the chat room about IPv6 compression, you get to do it one way, and that's it. So it's one of those where you only get to use one block of, you can only use the double colon once, and you use it in the first. You're not able to use it twice because then you don't know how many zeros were replaced. So you can only use it one time. One of those ways to look with it. Maybe you know what this possible answer is. Again, no answering in the chat room, no guessing in the chat room, none of those in the chat room. So make sure you go through and figure that piece out too. Have those there. This is, you can use the double colon one time. That's it. The rest of those zeros will just sit there. So they'll just be there and ugly. Although you can, of course, get rid of the trailing zeros. So they turn into 0:0:0. So that helps a little bit, right? Even though you can't collapse them into a double colon scenario. I'm going to take a sneak peek, by the way, at the folks answering this one. This is one, I think some of you may have done this before. Your possible answers here, 76% of you said SNMP. But why? Why did you choose SNMP? Because 7% of you chose HTTPS and 7% of you chose TRAP. It's kind of a tie for second, almost really a tie for third, although I guess all of these could really be a tie for second. SMTP got 4%. IMAP got 5%. So it's one of those. Whenever you work through them. So why did we all choose SNMP as the option? Probably because that's the right answer. SNMP, absolutely the right answer to deal with this. This is monitoring devices. If you're going to be doing anything on your network as a network administrator, you're going to be monitoring servers, switches, routers, firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, workstations, middleware devices, mainframes, mini computers, printers, and the list goes on. All of these devices have the capability, in fact, almost all of these devices probably have the capability to communicate to you over SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol. Even in the name, SNMP, it has that capability built into the name itself. SNMP is used extensively on the network because all of these devices can talk SNMP. Now, you're not connecting to the device to use it with SNMP. It's a way that you can query it to get information about how it's running. The SNMP support that's on this device is associated with what we call an SNMP MIB, a management information base. And that management information base is what the device gathers for statistics. So a file server might gather information about how much disk space is available on a volume. A printer might provide you with how many pages have been printed. Obviously, a server isn't going to give you how many pages have been printed. It doesn't print anything. So the MIB that's in a printer is usually different than a MIB that is supported in a server. And a similar problem with UPS. So UPS, you want to know, is the UPS functional? Does it have different interfaces? What interfaces are in use right now? What is the load on this UPS right now? How's the batteries on this UPS? You can gather a lot of information about a UPS. So SNMP is a great way to do that. You can simply query it. And in your query, you're really asking for a lot of numbers, but the query effectively says, hey, how's your battery doing? What is the current amount of power available in the batteries? And it will respond back, oh, we're at 100%. We're at 95%. We're at 12%. It'll give you information about that. Are there any errors on the UPS? Now, I just had a UPS here in the studio that got hit with a surge or something. It caused a problem inside there. I had to replace all the batteries. So it's one of those where it becomes handy. I can just talk right to the UPS. And usually there is a network interface card that you would need or an interface connection on that device. So it probably has an Ethernet port on it. You just connect to the Ethernet port, and now you can talk to that device over SNMP. You give an IP address. It works just like any other device. Give an IP address, subnet mask, a gateway, and now you can access it via SNMP. It's very, very handy to have that there. So hopefully that's one where you've been able to work through those and get what all the differences are with those. Hopefully that's one where it has been handy to be able to work through that. Hopefully, we'll work through there. I'm looking at another couple things here myself to have this here. Let's do, I know it's the top of the hour, but I do want to see if I can go through one other piece here. Let's look at the answers here for this UPS. If you did answer SNMP, 77% of you did get that one absolutely right. But why wouldn't it be HTTPS? Seems like we use HTTPS for a lot of things. And HTTPS indeed would be a way to maybe connect to the device and manage it if that device had a web server inside of it and provided that functionality. But not all UPSs do. So that's one that probably would not be your first choice. In fact, almost everything on the network, you automatically think, oh, I'll connect to it via SNMP. That will be the way that I go about using that. Would it be TRAP? Well, TRAP is not a protocol. I just kind of made that up. Now, there is a function within SNMP that can send alerts from a device like a UPS to you. So you don't have to constantly monitor it and ask it how it's doing. It will send you a message saying, oh, I just had a major problem. Oh, here's something you need to know about. Here's an alarm or an alert, and be able to have that there. A trap is what that is called in SNMP, but it's not a protocol. It's just an extension, a capability that's enabled within the protocol SNMP. Trap itself is not a protocol. And SMTP is the mail protocol, the simple mail transfer protocol. Well, we're not using mail to manage the device. That would be awful. So that would not be the protocol we use. IMAP's also a mail protocol. Wouldn't use that either. Mail is just a bad way to manage a device. Can you imagine having to send email to your UPS and hope maybe it will reply to you? Will it send me a note back? That's not the way to do it. The best way to manage almost all devices on your network is going to be with SNMP. So hopefully that's, I think 78% of you did pretty good with that one. So of course, that's going to be the right answer. All of these questions come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not downloaded and read through and have begun using these as your checklist for studies, you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to make sure you download these immediately because they have everything inside of it. It is extensive in the amount of information that is here. It's huge in the amount of information that's here. So make sure that you go through and know everything you should be doing on your exam by downloading the exam objectives. You can go to Google and type CompTIA exam objectives. It will take you right to the page. You can, of course, go to professormesser.com/objectives. Maybe that will help as well for those. Make sure those are available. They're all in here whenever you're trying to work through them. And I know whenever I'm looking at what people ask me all the time, what do I study? What am I going to be asked on the exam? It's all in there. It's written down for you in very detailed form, enough that you could use it as a checklist. It's amazing. We do one of these study groups every month. And we did this one only a couple weeks after the last one because of a hurricane. But now we've got kind of a month before the next one. So if you're watching this on a replay and you're wondering, when's the next live event? If you're watching this well after our next Network Plus study group on November the 8th of 2017, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar. And I'll tell you exactly when the next event is going to be. I keep those updated. There's also links there if you wanted to add your Google Calendar. Add me to your Google Calendar. I've got a Messer Studios calendar there as well. So you can have a big list of those. And I always update it so you'll always know when the next one is going to be, because it's going to change up a little bit during December. It's going to change up a little bit during January. We'll absolutely have all of our live events, but they're going to be at different times because of holidays and other things that are going on. Well, we've been here well over an hour. I want to thank you for hanging out. Stick around for the second hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines and we'll take questions from the chat room and answer those as well. In the meantime, you can always go to professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/Facebook. You type in professormesser.com/ the name of the social media thing you're hoping to find me on, and hopefully you'll find me there. The Network Plus course notes can always be found at professormesser.com/NPCN. Network Plus course notes is what those stands for. Of course, my thanks again to GTS Learning, and have those there. This is one that's also available, so make sure that you go through that as well. There's also a lot available on the calendar. I'll tell you exactly when the next event is. It's another good thing to have available. And of course, you're always welcome to come back, watch the replays anytime. They're available immediately after this is over. You can always go through and watch those as well. I want to thank you for joining us on this. Stick around for the second hour. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the study group. Well, thanks, everybody. That was a fast study group. Maybe I talked too much. It's one of those things where I want to give you all the possible information and everything about it, but sometimes that could be more of a challenge to have that there. So hopefully that's something you were able to do. Let's get the phone lines up and running, and then I'll give you the lines for calling in to have those there. The phone lines. Let's host a show. Let's start the show. Let's call in, shall we? I've got my magic Skype up here to be able to do this. Let's call into the show. I have to call into the show as well, just like you. Fortunately, it works a little better for me. I can type in this thing on my screen.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
All right. I'll do that. You'll never figure it out. And
welcome, host.
Welcome, host. I am the welcome host. And you're welcome, of course, to call in as well. You can call in anywhere in the continental U.S. at toll-free, 855-785-7545. If you're on Skype, anywhere in the world, it's also free because it's a toll-free number. You just put a +1 at the beginning and type 855-785-RJ45. Gets right to me. You're welcome to call in. I'm also checking the chat room, getting answers from the chat, questions and answers from the chat room. We can always talk about those as well to have those. Oh, and I didn't do a CEU. So if you are watching, you're looking for a code word for the CEU. That's one that we should do. If you're watching this for continuing education credit, you're more than welcome to go to the top or the bottom of my website, click the Contact Us link. In there, put your name. Make sure you put the right email address because I'm going to send you back a digital certificate that proves that you were here for a 1-hour webinar CEU. The magic code word that you need to put somewhere in that message that I'm reading is the code SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol course that you're using to talk to your UPS. And that means you must have watched this to be able to get that continuing education credit. So that's one where that will get you one. Now, for Network Plus, it's like 6 or 8 webinar-based CEUs that you can do. So you can't watch all of my videos and ask for 40 CEUs. They won't allow that. They already thought that one up. So you can't do that. That won't work to have that there. So it's another one of those things to think about whenever you're going through and working through these. So let's, we've got some people on the phone lines that have come up. I think we answered a lot of the questions that were coming up in real time in the chat, dealing with IPv6 and other things, but I am watching the track, the listing of things as they are tracking through the website. So feel free to put anything in there for the chat. But let's go to the phone lines. We have some folks that have dialed in already. And let's go to the 601 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes, sir, I am. I'm Brandon from
Brandon,
Mississippi.
thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I was calling to ask about the lab environments and just testing and practicing working with routers and switches and things like that.
Sure.
I don't necessarily want to or have the money to spend to buy like the labs and things like that. How necessary is that, or should I go ahead and find a way to make that investment, or will I be okay on the test without doing those seminars like packet tracers and things like that?
Well, one of the nice things about the Network Plus is they really don't get into the details of what do I do to configure a router to do static routing? How do I configure it to do dynamic routing? How do I configure a switch to be able to use the spanning tree protocol? Fortunately, you never get into that level of detail in the Network Plus. So I effectively tell people, stay away from those if at all possible. You should never be at the command line of a router or a switch to study for the Network Plus. Now, will it help you understand these ideas, these concepts, if you were able to set up a couple of routers and route between them, if you were able to set up a couple of switches and turn on spanning tree and turn off spanning tree and see what the differences are? Would that help? Of course it would. But is it required? No, I don't think it is. For the amount of detail required on the Network Plus for these topics, just understanding them at a high level is plenty. Now, on the Network Plus exam, there are some command lines that you need to know from the Windows command line or the Linux command line or the Mac OS command line. All of the commands are effectively the same across all of those, and they expect that you will know how to use the ping command, the traceroute command, the dig command. Those are listed in the Network Plus exam objectives. Anytime you see a command like that listed, you absolutely need to be able to know how to use it practically at a command prompt. But you'll notice in the Network Plus exam objectives, none of the Cisco type commands are in there. There's no switch commands in there. That's another level of extrapolation you simply don't have to worry about to pass the exam.
Yes, sir. Okay, awesome.
Hopefully that takes a load off your plate and you can instead focus on the other parts instead.
Absolutely it does.
Very good. Well, good luck with that. Thanks, Brandon.
Yes, sir.
That's but it doesn't hurt. Now, if you're planning to go into Cisco type network administration as your next step, maybe you want to grab Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer, for those not familiar, is Cisco's emulated environment where you can simply drag and drop routers onto a network map and switches and other devices, workstations, and you can effectively build an entire virtual world inside of that and be able to send traffic back and forth between them, configure switches, configure routers, but it's a level that you don't even need to get into for the Network Plus. Let's go to the 757 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
I am, Professor Messer. This is Jeff from
Jeff.
Hampton, Virginia.
Welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, if you could, I could take a neural net. You can download your brain into my brain, and I'll have a really easy time with this test.
Just get a long cable. We'll just put it in there. Maybe it's in the back like they did in the Matrix. We'll send it right to you.
There you go. There you go. Anyway, I want you to kind of go over that 802.11 AC 5 gig, 2 gig wrong answer.
Okay. Anything in particular that kind of threw you off with that one?
Yeah, because you mentioned that, and I didn't catch all of it. I was doing three things at once.
Me too.
You mentioned that, multitasking, that AC was only 5 gigahertz.
Correct.
Can you say that? Okay, so when you go purchase a router that has AC,
Yep.
It does both frequencies, doesn't it?
It does. And I have the same thing. I have an AC router, and that AC router, I actually configure and turn on a 5 gigahertz radio inside of it. And I also have the ability to configure a 2.4 gigahertz radio inside of it. Absolutely.
But what throws me off is it does have both.
It does. But the part that's kind of confusing with all of those is that the AC part of it is set up to run at 5 gigahertz, and you'll notice it has a different SSID in the router configuration as well, because the
true.
5
That's true.
gigahertz part of it is running 802.11ac. If you have any 2.4 gigahertz devices that you're using in your environment, you not only configure that, but you notice you give it a different SSID. That's because technically speaking, that's running at 802.11n inside of your network.
So they're only advertising the higher frequency.
Yeah, in fact, it's kind of a weird thing if you start looking at the marketing that they do around wireless. They tell you the possible total amazing, fantastically fast throughput that you can get through this device, and then you go home and you plug in your router and you turn on your 2.4 gigahertz devices, and you're not getting anywhere near that. That's because it's probably running at 802.11n.
So is there also AD available?
Not yet. The next level, the next set of wireless technologies are being worked on right now. But I don't think anybody is shipping any products yet. Even they tend to try to get them out quick in a form. As soon as they know what the basic standard is going to be, they rush out equipment that may not necessarily be in a ratified form of the next generation, but their hopes are that they can simply do a software upgrade and bring it up to what the final version is going to be. So I haven't seen any yet, but you can bet as soon as that standard is coming close to being ratified, you'll start to see hardware coming out to be able to use those new capabilities.
And is that standard AD?
Well, we don't know yet what they're planning to ratify because there is no standards associated with the next version yet until it's ratified. So we'll know soon what they finally come up with and decide this is what we're going to do.
Out of sight. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you calling.
All righty.
I love wireless. I love the wireless I have set up here. Everything we did today was almost all of it was wired. But my the workstation that was doing the presentation was on wireless. My other devices that are here on wireless, et cetera, et cetera. Some folks were asking in the chat room about the IPv6 and being able to collapse some of those things down. The rule is you can only use the double colon once. You cannot use it more than once. So if part of your IP address has a bunch of zeros you want to collapse, and another part of your IPv6 address has another set of zeros you want to collapse, you collapse the first set. You leave the other set alone. You cannot use a double colon in there because then you won't know how many zeros you took out of each side. If you have two double colons in there, that simply won't work right. So you have to effectively make a choice, and there is the normal choice, I believe, is the first. Thinking about the rules you have here, is the first set of zeros are the ones that you would abbreviate. Although technically, either one would work because it's an abbreviation. Having those there. Let's go to another phone call. The 646 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Oh, see, I can hear me. That's pretty good on the delay.
Hi, my name is Steven.
Hi, you probably want to get rid of that sound of me in the background there.
Okay, I have a question. What is BGP?
Whenever you start working with routers, you're going to run into some BGP. And I think BGP is listed. Let's find out which section of the Network Plus exam objectives BGP is associated with. It is in, I think it's only in the part that's dealing with hybrid routing protocols. It is indeed. One of the things that's in the exam objectives, in fact, I'll bring mine up so you can see it on the screen. There's my BGP listed here. So BGP is listed. Explain the basics of routing concepts and protocols. It goes back to that first call we just had where the person was saying, do I get packet tracer? Do I buy some routers? Do I plug in, start doing things? It only asks you to know the basics of routing concepts and protocols. So that's a very basic one to do. But boy, if you're doing any type of connectivity to the internet, you're going to be using BGP. In fact, on the exam objectives, you need to know RIP v2, BGP, OSPF, and ISIS. You'll probably find BGP running almost everywhere. It's probably the most popular, what we call exterior gateway protocol there is. This border gateway protocol, or BGP. because that is the one where everybody else in the world who is connecting to the internet is probably also using BGP if they're doing anything dynamic. Now, many people that connect the internet don't use a dynamic protocol. They have one connection, they set up a static connection, a static route, and they don't have to worry about the complexity of dynamic routing protocols because they have no dynamic routing that's going on. But let's say you are an organization that had multiple links to the internet, perhaps multiple links from different locations, and you wanted to be able to do some interesting things like load balance over those, or you wanted to be able to use one as a primary and have one as a backup. You're going to need some type of dynamic routing to be able to make that happen because people are going to be communicating into you and expecting the traffic to come back out. And BGP allows you to do some of those things. So it is an amazing protocol and a very broad protocol to understand. But once you start using it, especially if you're connecting to the internet, you find pretty useful to have that there, having all of those capabilities associated with it. Let's go back to the phone calls. The 561 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes. Hi, Professor Messer. My name is Ed.
Hey, Ed. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Well, I have a security-related question.
All right.
Recently, I have purchased several Internet of Things for the house.
Oh, me too.
And,
What'd you get?
During the setup, well, Alexa, I have a Nemo wall switch.
Oh, very nice.
And a dongle for casting.
Nice. Okay. So you're saying go ahead during setup.
And anyway, during the setup process, of course, they want to have your wireless password.
Yes.
And I noticed that these wireless passwords that I was entering was being done on a remote server. And now, so this remote server now has my wireless password. And one of them said that they were going to encrypt it and the data would be safe. But the other one didn't mention anything about encryption. I don't even know who runs or manages that server.
Right.
And I want to know like what kind of vulnerability have I opened myself up to because of that? You know, the way I look at it is that, unless you're physically close to my router, having my wireless password probably won't do you much good, but I don't know for sure. Can you explain, give me some information on that?
You're spot on with the concerns associated with this, because if somebody does have your wireless password, then they're able, if they're anywhere near your network, they could theoretically connect to your network and have access to everything that's on the inside of your house and all the other devices connected inside of your network. So your concerns about security are 100% valid, and your experience with looking at the security of these devices is also 100% valid, and probably one of the largest problems that in the industry we have with the Internet of Things, the IoT environments. Internet of Things sort of appeared very suddenly. In the last Security Plus that was 3 years ago, there was really no mention of it. Now it's, of course, mentioned. We have these all the time. And different devices implement the security different ways. For example, I have a doorbell that I've configured to be on my wireless network. I know in that doorbell that it is configured, and everything in there is configured on a web front end inside the doorbell. The doorbell is effectively running a web server. But what do they do with that information? Do they put it in the cloud themselves and hold it? Because maybe they set it up so that the MAC address of your device, if it communicates back to the mothership and it loses its configuration, it can reconfigure itself. Is that what they're thinking? The problem, of course, is anything you configure like that could potentially take everything you give it and send it back up to the mothership. Here's the next step, of course, that makes this even scary. Or even more scary, what if somebody was able to take advantage of that device? They found a vulnerability in my doorbell that allowed them to connect to that device, have my doorbell capture all of the traffic on the wireless network, and send it back to somebody unknown on the internet. Those are the things everyone thinks about with the Internet of Things as being remarkably insecure, and they are effectively very right. The potential here for damage is extensive. And we're already starting to see some of this, although this isn't technically an Internet of Things problem. But there was, I think it was last month or the month before, was millions of D-Link routers were suddenly found to have a vulnerability. And Linksys routers have a vulnerability that the NSA was taking advantage of, and other people, that they would be able to connect to your router, be able to effectively embed themselves in the router and send all of your network traffic and communication to them and any other information they wanted to gather from your router and your network as well. These are significant security problems, and nobody has a good answer on how we're supposed to deal with this, other than do everything you can do to monitor these, which quite plainly is probably not very much, because most of these devices communicate over encrypted links. You don't even know what they're sending back and forth. Let's hope they're using encrypted links. Your concerns about security are spot on. If you look on the internet for anything written up about IoT and security, you will find extensive information. This is what a lot of companies and businesses are very concerned about from a security perspective, because what if somebody brings in one of these devices on the inside? Does that open them up for security problems? It absolutely does. And we're going to see a shift from people attacking corporate America and organizations to people now attacking homes. And that's going to be a completely different world to live in. So not a very great outlook, Ed. We're going to rely on these manufacturers to do a good job with security. If you look for DEF CON, CanSec West, and a lot of these other security events, go look in their archives for Internet of Things. There are plenty of presentations and videos you can watch of showing how they hacked into yet another device that is the Internet of Things and how easy it happened to be. We're relying on those professionals and those researchers to figure out where the vulnerabilities are, and to make the companies liable to fix those whenever they run into an issue. Hopefully we can keep ahead of it, because we're gonna have to.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that they don't necessarily have to be parked out front of my house or hack into the server that has my wireless password. There's another way that they can enter my local area network.
Well, fortunately, there is a geographical piece to this. So if, let's say the only piece of information they have is your wireless password, they would have to be near your wireless access point to be able to take advantage of that. But what if I was your next door neighbor and I broke into the company that's holding your wireless password and I got your wireless password and then I used it across the street from you? That's the concern.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like if I gave you my car keys and you had keys to my car, but my car was parked in a different continent, having my car keys isn't going to do you much good.
But if I took a picture of your car keys and sent it to somebody in that other continent and they printed out a new set of keys, then we'd have a problem.
That's true. Yes.
Just keep an eye on them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Keep monitoring, keep watching what's going on. It's going to get interesting, Ed.
Thank you.
Take care. That's a valid concern. That's a super valid concern. And I got a lot of Internet of Things. I have a garage door opener that's connected to the internet. I have a doorbell connected to the internet that has video on it. I have the air conditioning and heating controllers that are on the internet. What else? There's plenty of stuff. I've got, of course, Sonos. I've got the speakers. I've got the Alexa. There's, it's crazy. It's a little bit crazy. Let's go back to the phones. 765 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes. My name's Jonathan from Orlando, Florida. Basically just wanted to say thanks for all you do, enabling young and old to change careers to something more fulfilling. And I just wanted to call and just say thanks.
Well, you are quite welcome, sir. Hopefully things have gone well for you in Orlando. How was hurricane season for you?
Not catastrophic.
We're about the same thing here in Tallahassee, so I think we're hanging in there. I have a brother who lives in Apopka, so that's a part of the world I try to keep an eye on, see what's going on. You're quite welcome, sir. It's my pleasure for making these videos. It's been interesting because I've been working on the next Security Plus iteration. You normally don't see me for these live, except for these live events, because I'm in this dark room writing away. And this week we just finished all of the presentation materials, which is really the hardest part. And that took months. And it's kind of nice to be able to now give some of that and actually present it and show it to the world. So it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. If anybody ever would like to do something on the internet, this is a fun thing to do. So I appreciate it. Thank you, sir, for your call.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have one, quick follow-up question.
Oh, sure.
The pop quiz things that you did for the A+, is there some form of that coming for Network and Security Plus in the future?
There needs to be. They're very time-consuming things to put together. I write these, for those who aren't aware, for A+, there's a daily Monday through Friday pop quiz question that goes out that I send via email. I put it on Twitter. I put it on Facebook. I put it on Google+. So that every day you're getting a new question. And I write a new question every day. And what I do is I really sit down on the weekend. I write all of them and they get posted and they're just automated and they just show up out in the world. I haven't done that level of pop quiz for Network Plus and for Security Plus just because it's very time consuming. It probably takes a few hours just to do a week's worth of those. So imagine adding on 2 more of those it would take an entire day for me to do that. What I've ended up doing is there's a Network Plus question of the week that goes out on Tuesday. And I have considered doing a Security Plus question of the week to go out for Security Plus. And I think that is what we're planning to do once we get the next iteration of the Security Plus, the SY0501 videos started. I think that would be a great thing to do. I'd love to do more. And I'm trying to figure out a way to do that I could integrate with the videos so that you could watch a video and then have a bunch of questions that you could be asked immediately that pertain to the video you just watched. So we're working on those ideas. Wow. It's a slow motion, but there's always something to do. That's the good part.
All right. Thank you, Professor.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's one of those where I just have to keep doing it. I just have to keep the ball moving, and having those there becomes the real challenge, especially when you get into things like Security Plus, Network Plus, A+, and then I've got other things we're working on that are beyond that. We do have, of course, Cisco course notes out there as well to be working on. All of those take time, and that's the biggest hurdle for anyone, right? Is to find time to do all of those. But in this past week, I did finish the Network Plus content. Right now, I'm putting together, for those of you, I know this is the Security Plus content. I know this is the Network Plus live stream, but the Security Plus course notes are in the process right now, and they will take the new format. The same format as the Network Plus, where every video is labeled with the video name, the number, all of the content from the video is in there. All of the graphics I create will be in there. So it's going to be one of those where it's just going to be this enormous book, kind of like the Network Plus actually turned out to be one of the largest I have ever done, because it's technically, I think it's 73 pages total, because there is a little introduction and then pages of the table of contents before you ever get to the content. But the actual notes are 65 pages in length. And I'd love to see something at least that big for Security Plus. So maybe we'll see something like that. Security Plus tends to be more lecture-y. Is that a word? It tends to be less graphical and more questions about process, procedure. Although in this latest version of Security Plus, they added more information about block ciphers. So I put in some diagrams that show here's how data goes from plain text. How do you get it encrypted? Well, it does these things. And so I've got a diagram that shows what gets added to the plain text and how it gets modified to finally get the ciphertext. So those types of things I think are nice, because you can visualize, oh, this is what a block cipher does, rather than saying, oh, this is AES. AES is a block cipher. Well, what does that mean to be able to make that happen? So it's nice to be able to visually see that process as it goes through. So hopefully that might work into all of those. I think whenever I start trying to figure out the details, I just want to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. I almost have to rope myself in with all of those things to have them there. It becomes a little bit more of a challenge. Now, we mentioned, and I'll give this out as kind of a tip kind of a behind the scenes, a little inside baseball. CompTIA has not officially said, here's what's coming in the next N10007, which will be the next Network Plus. But I have found out on the internet that I have seen exam objectives out there. So if I recommend right now, if you're planning to take the Network Plus right now, study for the Network Plus, the N10006, and take it. Don't wait. Maybe it will come out in March next year. Maybe it'll be after. You don't want to be waiting for a new version. Start right now with your studies. And even then when it comes out, there probably won't be a lot of new content available to study from. So a lot of people I've had people end up studying until the last day an exam is taken. So N10007 will come out. 6 months later, people are still taking their N10006 exam. The exam objectives, I did not find on Reddit. The exam objectives, if you're good with Google, you will be able to find the N10007 exam objectives. Whenever I'm searching for something that's in a PDF form, there's a Google parameter. You put in file type :PDF, and it will only show you results that are associated with the PDF. That's a very easy way to find the N10006 exam objectives, the SY0401 objectives, file type :PDF. Helps every time. There's a lot of great little Google hacks like that can help you find things and really narrowing down the list of things. You will find that Security Plus changed a lot. The new Network Plus doesn't change as dramatically. And I think you'll find this whenever you look at Network Plus through the years. There are not an enormous number of differences between Network Plus versions because networking doesn't change as fast as operating systems, and it doesn't change as fast as security. You'll find through the years, networking tends to have these incremental updates associated with it. Yes, now we have to deal with Internet of Things. Now we have to network those. Now we have to network cloud-based technologies. So it changes, the things changing around it certainly apply back to the networking piece, but the underlying network technology, it's still Ethernet, it's still the internet, it's still IP addresses, it's still IPv6, all of those. It's one of those that makes it very interesting. But I don't see a dramatic difference between the N10007. One of the next things I plan on doing is sitting down with both of the exam objectives, and I go through and I look at what the differences are. It gets rid of this, it adds this, this is the same. And I make a big list of those. So that's my next step with all of those and having them there. I've got time for at least one more call, so let's go back to the calls. The 760 area code, if I hit the button properly, and have that pop up on my screen. Maybe I won't. Maybe it won't. Maybe we're just done. There he is. Hello, caller. Are you there? Hello, caller. Are you there? I hear me.
Hello?
Hi, what's your name? You might want to turn off the stream and listen into the phone. Hi.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Sorry. I'm an idiot and have the speaker on.
That's me calling into the every time. Hi, what's your name?
Kirkland.
Hey, Kirkland. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, so I've spent the past 2 years getting my associates in networking, and I've just now decided, hey, maybe I should get certified and all that goodness. But my question is, when it comes to these certification exams and because I know there's a difference between the Good for Life exams from Linux Plus and Server Plus and the Network Plus, which is only good for 3 years or so.
Right.
What is the process for the renewal, and how difficult is it in your opinion?
The process, as CompTIA set it up, and other companies do this different ways. And for those that aren't familiar, whenever you take an IT-related exam these days, you'll notice that all of them have an expiration associated with them. So if you take a Cisco exam, there's an expiration. If you take a Microsoft exam, there isn't really an expiration, but there sort of is, because the Microsoft technologies only stick around for so long. They are sort of automate themselves out of existence and upgrade themselves out of existence in a lot of ways. So nobody's taking a Windows XP certification right now. They're working on Windows 10, so it's sort of built in. But all the other exams out there, including CompTIA's, require some type of renewal after 3 years because there is an international standard for ITs, or really for certifications. It really focuses on IT certifications, but the international standard standard requires that you update and get renewed in these. And what has happened is that our federal government in the United States has decided to use that that ISO standard as what they will look for when people are certified in the federal government. Now, since the federal government's requiring it, everybody is now doing it this way. So a lot of people wondered, why did we go from good for life to this 3-year thing? That's why we went to this 3-year thing. So it's not a bad idea, because after 3 years, things do change a little bit. It is good to stay up to date. In CompTIA's website, they have a very good, although very involved section of their website about renewals. And the renewal section goes into extensive information about continuing education. That's what they call it on their websites, the continuing education section. And they talk about how you can renew this. To break it down very quickly, the way CompTIA does it is you have to accumulate continuing education units, or CEUs. They call them CEs or CEUs. You can do this, though, in so many different ways. You could, of course, take the next version of the exam. That will certainly renew it. That's not even a renewal. That's really, you're just taking the exam again, and then you've got another 3 years behind that. But what a lot of people will do is simply take a higher level exam. For example, if you have the A+, and you take the Network Plus, as soon as you pass your Network Plus, you've now also renewed your A+. If from there you need to take the Security Plus, you've just renewed both your Network Plus and your A+. So there's some advantages to stay within CompTIA's ecosystem to be able to do renewals. Fortunately, there are also a group of...
Let me ask a dumb question.
Sure.
So you take the A+, and then Network Plus renews the A+. Say, for sake of argument, somebody doesn't take the Security Plus. If they retake the next Network Plus, does it renew their A+ again, or do you have to keep going up the ladder? It
will renew the A+ again, and there is a list of things on the CompTIA website in that certification, the continuing education area, where it lists out this hierarchy of exams and what it takes to renew. The other thing you can do is collect CEUs, and you can do that by attending a trade show, taking a class, watching a webinar online. There's a huge list of things, and you can accumulate hour after hour of those and present those to CompTIA and say, I collected as many as I needed to renew this particular certification. CompTIA has also been working really, really hard on other options for renewal, and they have some things on their website that if you take their online course, it happens to give you all of the hours you need to renew. They've done this with A+ and Network Plus. I don't know if they've done it with Security Plus yet, but it appears they're working towards that. So that if you're on your last week and you haven't been doing anything and you aren't ready to take a new exam, you can effectively buy their training, and you pay $100, you go through the training, and you're renewed. That's really what it does for you, because they know people like me will wait until the last minute, and then you've lost a perfectly good certification. So they're trying to give people options for those. Did we lose you, Kirkland?
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. And I recommend everybody go out and look through all of these options. It's quite a read on the website. Why renew? Learn about the renewal process. There is so much to read about and so many different options. It almost gets a little overwhelming to try to figure out with all of those pieces what it takes. But it's not as bad as you might think. It's not as bad to work through all of those that you might think. Did I just swear online? I don't believe I did. Did I? Oh my goodness. Golly. I don't believe I did. I try not to. When the camera's off, when the mic is off, there can be some potty talk around here. I might say a word or two, not just in normal talk, but golly, I stubbed my toe. It's very close. Got to watch those. I don't have a button here to bleep things out, but that's how that would work next. Well, that kind of brings us to the end, I think, of another study group. I want to thank you for your calls. Thank you for attending the first hour where we did Q&A. We'll do another hour next month. Thank you for going through and listening to the piece that is after all of this, the after show, where we just talk about whatever. I like to do those as well. Don't forget about your continuing education unit emails to me. I try to go through all of them. It's been about a week, so a number of you have sent me an email and said, I haven't gotten mine yet. Yes, I apologize. So I'm a week behind, but I will tonight sit down and I'll send all of those out and have them there too. We do another one of these study groups. Next week will be Security Plus, and then we get into the end of the year already. Who would have thought? Thank you for joining me on this one, though. Couldn't do it without you. Thanks for your ongoing support. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group.